You are listening to the Thinking Effect podcast with Ortal Green and Lillian Kriegler.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 31, second episode in our new season. And today we're talking about how can teachers create a safe environment for learning. But before we go off on a tangent about that, I'm going to say hello to Ortal. Hi, Ortal.
Hello, Lillian. I'm really excited about this season and this episode.
Yes, so last week we were talking about teachers changing their persona almost from being a kind of sage on the stage to becoming more a facilitator and taking their students on board on a journey of discovery where everyone's involved in deciding about, what is going to be learned and how it's going to be learned. But that's not going to happen unless they're on board with us. So how do we onboard our students? How do we create this environment that is so safe for them to take risks, that they are going to hop on this train or whatever vehicle it is and travel with us and accept their role in the development of their own education?
Absolutely. I mean, we spoke a few times in the past about the importance of having a safe environment in the classroom. And in that context of that season, yes, last episode we spoke about the shift in the mindset of a teacher, the shift that required for them to create an environment where the students are leading their own learning. But now we're looking at the students in that lens and thinking, okay, what do the students need in order to lead their own learning, in order to feel safe to do so? And for that, they need to have an environment where they feel comfortable being vulnerable and sharing their ideas and thoughts without being concerned that someone might judge them, assess them, make fun of them. So in order for students to fully participate and fully bring themselves into the learning experience, they need to feel safe.
Yes, they absolutely do. And, in the reading I've done in the past, there are two ways to bring about change. So the one is kind of an oriental way where the environment slowly and subtly changes over time. So you don't even really realize what's happening. It's kind of an informal change, informal transformation. And then there's a more formal way. And this is kind of a Western way of thinking where we decide, we're going to change this, we're going to do this, and these are the steps we're going to take, and it's more formal. And I think we need to embrace both of these. So as the educator in this more gentle transformation, it's about how you present yourself in the classroom, how you engage and how you're communicating with your students. So one of the things to be aware of is to value and to respect what they are offering you and not being immediately judgmental about that. And we had this beautiful episode, and also I'm sure you'll go back to it in episode 24, where risk-taking was the actual topic.
Yeah, with Karen Boyce,
With Karen Boyce. But we want, in our interaction with the students, we want to be respectful, we want to be accepting, rather than critical. We want to also engage them in deep questions. We don't want it always be on the surface, because that's where, when we are really getting to the deep aspect of something, that's when people are really willing to share because they've got something to say. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But this is the more informal way, is creating a culture of acceptance, a culture of, knowing that what your students are coming with is very, very valuable to everyone. And then later on, we'll move on to what are the formal ways that you can create norms and protocols.
Absolutely. I agree that there are two sides to it. And firstly, us as educators and teachers need to change how we respond to our students' answers, ideas, etc. We need to treat all of them in the same manner. So not prefer one idea or thoughts over another. So we need to make sure that we are providing them with that safe environment with our responses. And I also love the formal way, as I think it's important to kind of set the ground rules with your students in terms of how do we treat each other in our classroom? How do we respond to other people's ideas and way of thinking? And you can definitely come up with a few ground rules with your students. And some of them might be that all ideas are welcomed. And there are no silly ideas, because, you know, it's easy to criticize someone else and say, oh, that's just a silly idea. That will never work. But no, in our classroom, we're not saying that. So we're not judging and telling someone else that their idea is silly. And also, I think one important thing is to change the language that we use. Do you know, Lillian, for example, when someone is saying their opinion, sometimes we say, our response starts with no, right? Someone is telling you something, you say, no, but this is this and that and the other. So you're starting very negative as a response to that person inputs or thinking. And this is where we can shift it from saying no to say yes and. So when we say yes and, we accept what the other person is saying. I mean, we kind of validate. I mean, you have the right to think this way or to say this thing, and I have something else to add to that. And this way, you're not passing judgment on whatever that person said. You just adding to it and adding your point of view to that discussion.
Yes, I love what you said there about, you know, in our classroom, because I think that you are, through that language, you are creating a culture in your classroom. And it's a culture where, you know, once the ideas have been presented and they've been done, it's been done without judgment, then together in our classroom, we now look at everyone's ideas and let's decide together where we'd like to go next, or which ones we think are going to make life the most interesting or the most fun, or that we're going to learn the most from. Because then, rather than dictating where people are going to go, you're providing them with some ability to judge and to evaluate. So in a sense, that becomes a really good learning experience, and no one feels excluded in that. It's a dialogue rather than, you know, even a discussion, because in a discussion, as you say, you often say, no, I don't agree with you. Or, you know, you lukewarm in your response. And I had this experience myself. I was working with the school with some educators the other day, and I asked them to do a particular task. And I got my first response, and I got my second response, and then I got one that I really loved. I thought, oh, that's great. And then I thought, uh-oh, you're doing what you want other people never to do. So then I had to backtrack and go back to the first person and say, you know, you said the word visualization, and that is such a valuable addition to what we're saying. So you sometimes go back, you know, catch yourself making a mistake. We're not perfect. You know, and when Ortal and I are saying, this is how you might be, we're saying this to ourselves as well all the time. This is how you might be. And, you know, maybe what I was saying didn't land well that day, or it did, but it depends on the culture that you are creating.
Absolutely. I mean, we all on a constant journey of self-improvement and self-growth. So we all keep learning and changing and evolving and improving ourselves as we go. I mean, this is part of the fun.
Yes. And, you know, once we establish some norms and protocols for how we respond to each other in the classroom, and we've modeled that, you know, I can hear students who model this very, very well when they learn the techniques for accepting, just having the dialogue and changing. And it raises the tone of the classroom over time, and they start to identify with themselves as that kind of learner and thinker. And even if it doesn't happen in other classrooms, I mean, they might come and say to you, oh gosh, you know, we were in this classroom the other day, and let's say Joel had such a wicked response from that. Sorry, I shouldn't use the word wicked because some people think that's good. Such an awful response from the teacher, you know, she really cut him down. And then, you know, but that doesn't happen in our classroom. We have these protocols. And hopefully you generate this through the entire school, that you don't have this us and them situation where, you know, you have a culture of acceptance and a culture of where you can even engage very reluctant students, and in other classrooms that's not happening for them. You want it to pervade your school and be the norm.
Absolutely. And I think also one of the things that I like about, you know, thinking about within our classroom, within our environment, is that you create that environment of connection and belonging. So your students feeling belonging to that environment, they are part of it, they are contribute to it, they are shaping it. And this is a wonderful thing, as when you feel belonging, you're more engaged, you're more interested in contributing and helping and supporting each other. So you're creating a lovely culture in your classroom by doing so.
Yes, and you can raise the ability of students to step up, to take responsibility and to lead groups and to lead thinking, and then in another situation to step back. Because sometimes in current classrooms, the minute someone steps forward, they become a target. You know, there can be a negative spiraling down, a culture which sucks people back down, but you want them to work so well together that no one feels like they're out on a limb and that they could become a target. And it's not an easy situation to manage. But if you do, they will become much more responsible, and it raises their profile in their own mind of themselves as a thinker and a learner. They don't just become a schoolgoer. You know, I'm more than a schoolgoer. You know.
Absolutely. And the school environment becomes something you enjoy participating in. So you enjoy going to school and supporting and growing and helping your fellow students. So I think it's just a win-win situation for everyone.
Yeah, so the formal way is, you know, you might even ask the question after a few weeks. You know, we've spent some time together in the classroom, and I've noticed that when we discuss things, that people are really willing to contribute. What are the things in our classroom that are making this viable? What are the things that are helping us to engage with each other? What norms are we using? So in that way, it's not even like you deciding, oh, we're going to have norms, we're going to have this. They're surfacing, and then you recognize them and you record them. And then once you have a list of norms, so norms are the normal, usual way that we work together, and the protocols are some rules around that, because then, you know, they can start calling each other on that and say, you know, you've been very judgmental here. I'm allowed to have an opinion, and I'm going to put it in the pot, and then together we can have a look at it. But, you know, don't tell me straight off that I haven't said something good. Or, you know, if someone's causing a ruckus in the classroom, people can say, that's not actually being very helpful at the moment. It's great being the classroom clown and we love you for it, but honestly, it's not the right time. Let's move on. So, you know, they have more, they have a basis on which they can engage with one another.
Absolutely. And they should hold each other accountable for the ground rules they came up with together. And as a teacher, you can revisit these rules every so often. So every so often you can, you know, sit with your classroom, sit with your students, go over them and ask, okay, how is this working for us? What do you think? Is it beneficial? How is it beneficial? Do we need to change it in any way? Do we need to add something else or remove something from that? So it doesn't need to be a static thing.
Yes.
It can be a living ground rule that you revisit every so often and have an open conversation with your students to see whether you need to modify it in some shape or form.
Yes, and I mean, after COVID, when everyone's coming back in the classroom, it seems like it's almost more important to focus on ensuring that there is this sense of safety, because unless you have that, the students aren't going to be ready for learning. So some students, have been working at home and they've enjoyed a particular way of getting on with their life, maybe. Some of them liked it more than being at school. So you really have to concentrate on getting the emotional tone right to get the cognition happening. The cognition mill, the beautiful thinking, is not going to happen unless they do feel, like you say, I love your words, to feel a sense of belonging in that space.
Yeah, absolutely. Is it time for summary?
Yes, yes. So what we're talking about today is creating a safe environment. And the reason why is that unless the students feel a deep sense of belonging, and unless their contributions are recognized, valued, respected, they are not going to travel with you to become more responsible in their own learning. So we're talking about a teacher as a facilitator, taking children on a journey of learning, being there side by side, but you are not going to get that unless they feel safe from your criticism or their students, their fellow students, criticism and evaluation and judgment. So to be a risk taker in this situation, there are formal and informal ways that you can create a beautiful family culture. So we were talking in the informal ways of responding in a non-judgmental way, in a dialogic way with your students. And in the formal way is to actually develop some norms and protocols which are finally recorded and written down so that both students and educators can call each other on these norms and protocols. So we want to develop a great sense of belonging.
This is a beautiful summary, Lilian.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I love how you say that to me every time. I feel so validated.
This is exactly what I'm aiming for. Great.
You are funny.
Okay, so as always, feel free to write to us to the Think in Effect podcast@gmail.com. We love getting emails from you. So continue doing so. And the next episode is going to be an interview with an inspiring educator. So tune in next week to get inspired.
I love it. I will be tuning in. All right. Goodbye, everyone, and hope to see you soon.
Bye.